It is 8 a.m. in the Mile High City on this Monday, November 10th, 2025. Good morning, Denver, Colorado. You've tuned in to the Jeff and Bill Show. News Talk 710 KNUS. Phone lines are hot. Text messages are hot. A lot taking place over the weekend. A late-night vote in the U.S. Senate yesterday that may end this government shutdown as 8 Democrats come across the aisle to negotiate a deal with Republicans. Grassroots Democrats furious, calling for the end of Chuck Schumer's leadership in the U.S. Senate, saying he can no longer effectively lead, cannot keep his caucus together. They didn't get what they wanted. They capitulated to the Republicans. And now it's time for a leadership shakeup among the Democrats. Republicans sticking together. Was this a victory for them? If the government reopens without big concessions on ACA, Obamacare subsidies, is this a victory for Republicans? Now, that debate's going to be coming. There's a vote, a planned promise vote on those subsidies. So can Republicans win on that? Suzanne texted in, why haven't Republicans ever proposed a health care plan? We'll get into all of this plus more, including Fort Lewis College now changing their tune, unanimously supporting a Turning Point USA chapter at Fort Lewis. Donald Trump ready to send you a $2,000 check because those tariffs have been so successful. Is that a good idea? Plus, Donald Trump pardoning Giuliani, Jenna Ellis, and others in the 2020 election debacle. We'll get into all of this and more this hour. Now it's time, though, for news and comment with Blake Olson.
Blake Olson.
Blake Olson, news and comment.
Hey, good morning. Monday. 35 and sunny in Denver. All right. Expecting a high of 71 today. Sorry, I had to. News sponsored by Pastor Camp Heating and Air Conditioning at 303-777-1234 to learn more about special savings opportunities on Lennox equipment. Our top story, the end may be in sight for the Schumer shutdown in a 60-40 vote. 8 Democratic senators joined Republicans in advancing a stopgap measure that would fund the government through January 30th. An agreement was reached that included a future vote on extending health care subsidies and assurances that federal workers furloughed during the Schumer shutdown would be reinstated. Colorado travelers can expect more flight headaches throughout the week. Airline expert Steve Cowell.
It's going to be easy for the airlines to reinstate the flights, but it's, of course, all based on the controllers coming off their sick leave and coming back into their stations. It's not going to happen all at once.
DIA still feeling the effects of the lefty lockup.
Does anybody know why air traffic controllers are paid federal employees? That was a question that popped up in the House. And I'm like,
that's actually
I don't
a good question.
know.
That's
I mean, the
really
pilots aren't.
But the pilots are necessarily the pilots are individual carriers, and so
the airlines.
Yeah, so that and the other one
FAA.
would be the FAA, and so that would be government rules and regulations based on they be employed by the airport, unless you want to necessarily privatize airports, and that would be a whole nother rigmarole.
That sounds awesome. Let's do that.
Oh God, no. That would be a nightmare. That'd be a nightmare. And the other part
why
is,
are you so afraid of privatizing? Some of these entities?
Again, I am not afraid of privatization, nor am I afraid of tax burden. Again, I am the person that was like all for the gay games coming into town because of the tax burden. I'm all for that. No, I'm free market. I'm fine with that. I think there are some constraints on it, and what I worry about is if you're doing it, does that mean that United pays their own flight attendants, and then the American Airlines pays their own flight attendants? That's where I think it gets into a problem. Is how do you possibly manage that if it's some sort of a corporation. That's what I can't figure out, is how that would be managed inside a singular air traffic controller tower. Unless now we have to build airports that have multiple air traffic controller towers that only function on one particular airline carrier, and then how do we define and decide where everybody's going to land? There are just so many layers of things that I just can't figure in my head how that would work functionally. Yeah.
Wouldn't there be more regulations though? Even though because you'd have to have regulations on the privatization, so then it would end up being, wouldn't it?
Yeah, you probably would on it. Yeah.
I think it would be better, 100% better, if that was the case. One, you wouldn't have. I almost wonder if politicians want air traffic controllers tied to government spending so they can use them as pawns in negotiating government deals. There's no reason in my mind why they would be. There's plenty of other things that we use in life that are just as critical as an air traffic controller that are privatized. Doctors, for instance, pilots, all of those people, and we get to have choice. And yeah, they could all be in the same tower. They could be run by a company that contracts either with the airport or with the government in order to manage that. But it wouldn't have to be so tied to the government all the time.
You'd have to be careful with the name also, because you can't do like Acme or Earl's.
Yeah.
Something like that. Yeah.
The other part is if we
Earl's
talk
Air
about
Traffic Controlling School.
And the other part is if we're saying that we're just going to have a management company that's there in the singular tower, then all we're doing is we're having. I don't see how it makes the system necessarily better.
Yeah,
all we're going to have is more companies trying to that are paying people. That seems to create more of a consternation and more of a tangled web as far as who's in that facility at what time and what planes are you responsible for, what planes are you not, and then how do you, in one universal system, if I'm responsible for the American Airlines planes, how do I then coordinate with the United Airlines planes? How do I, because they're not employing
that way. No. Does that they could all pool their money and it goes to pay for the air traffic controllers. Right now we pool our money, but it's from taxes.
So it'd be a tax we could get from each one of the companies to pay for the group of air traffic. Oh yeah, that's what we're doing now.
They would just add it to their fees.
What we're doing now.
But you're already paying your taxes.
That's what we're doing now. That's
right,
it.
And it goes through the government. And I'm just pointing out, the air traffic controllers were furloughed for 40 days because Republicans and Democrats couldn't figure it out. So I'm not sure how any other system could be worse at this point.
Yeah, but again, the air traffic controllers strike during the 80s, and Reagan fired all of them. And he had that power because he was part of the government. So so the air traffic controllers, we could still have the shutdown. It could be a private industry. They could just go on strike. So it doesn't prevent what we're seeing is the problem that I have with that. That's why I can't wrap my head around it. I'm not saying it's wrong. I'm just
striking
trying to.
Too? Aren't there certain industries that you're just prevented in law from being able to strike, like nursing?
I think it has to do with government functions, not necessarily. But I don't know. Again, I didn't look into it this morning. I don't know off the top of my head. Wouldn't surprise me if there are some that can't, but most of the time I think those are tied to government institutions.
What if we made it part? Now this may be crazy, but what if we made it part of the Air Force? Is that crazy?
Ooh, you made the Air Force
like those who aren't pilots,
air traffic controllers.
Yeah.
Possibly, my only concern
but then taxpayers are still paying for it.
Yeah.
Right,
so one of the arguments being made here from Jason in Denver is that letting the airlines control air traffic would be like letting trucking companies replace the highway patrol. So do they serve as like a policing agency? Possibly, but it seems to me like the air traffic controllers are a little different than the FAA. Like the FAA would clearly serve as a policing role with, whether or not you're drunk, for instance, before you pilot an airplane. True. But as far as just managing the comings and goings of airlines at an airport, why that has to be a government function and then tied to a budget and then allowed Republicans and Democrats to dispute it when pilots, in my mind, played just as critical role as an air traffic controller, yet we've allowed that to be privatized. And now you have competition. I can choose to fly United and pay a lot. I could choose to fly Frontier and pay little. But in both cases, they seem to be equally safe. So I'm not sure. It has to be a government-run entity.
It's an interesting question. It's just when it comes to that, man, it's hard to, I don't know. It's just, it's hard to grasp all the regulations or more or less. I mean, it's hard to believe that there wouldn't be more regulations, you know?
Yeah. And I don't know how the private company then would have to either negotiate a contract for them to have their people inside of the flight tower, or they have to build their own. And the one thing that I still can't figure out is, if they're all in that flight tower, how do you blend who's responsible for which airlines and that you're all going to be landing? That's the thing I can't, because once you silo them, I understand there's a delineation of services inside the air traffic controllers, but it's not done based on the airline, from what I understand. One person not responsible for United, one person not responsible for American. And so once you do that, how do you then decide who's going to land where and how often? And that, because if you're the United person, I'm the American Airlines person, and somebody else is the, the Etihad person, how do we decide? I mean,
I don't think you have to divide it up. Like, you don't divide up the cleaning crew.
I'm not sure how cleaning crews. I don't know if the cleaning crews are paid.
The airport pays one entity to do that, but it's a private entity that they pay. But
I guess I just fear I don't want to have the JetBlue of air traffic controllers. You know, that just frightens me. Well, we'll see. It's a good idea, though, Jeff. I'll think about it. I'll pray about it. 47 issuing a new round of pardons.
There are 77 more people being pardoned by President Trump, including former New York City Mayor Rudy Giuliani, former Trump attorney Sidney Powell, and former Chief of Staff Mark Meadows. Those pardoned were allegedly involved in efforts to overturn the 2020 presidential election, including a plan to field an alternate slate of electors. The pardons were issued even though the Trump Justice Department was not pursuing the cases. I'm Rory O'Neill.
2 months ago today, Charlie Kirk was assassinated, and millions remembering what Benny Johnson and John Solomon said hours after that horrific day.
That there is some considerable evidence that there were state actors involved here. That's it. I don't want to go any further than that. I can't go any further than that. That is what I've been told. It is not like this is exclusive to me necessarily. John Solomon said it last night on Sean Hannity's show. Here we go.
And we all lost, no matter what side of the political aisle you're on, we lost something important in America today. But the case goes on. The investigation goes on. There's a lot of piecing of evidence together. We don't have a shooter tonight. We have a couple leads, a couple people that were released that probably aren't the shooter. There's a couple hot leads. There's a little bit of foreign intelligence.
Okay, investigation continues, and we pray about that one also. DJT at the Commanders game, enlisting troops into the military. So the boos were there. Probably the fact that it's D.C., Democratic heaven.
They booed him while he's trying to swear in troops.
Yeah.
Come on.
It's just tasteless.
There's no bottom for the Democrats.
Yeah, that's horrible. It was horrible. It really was. Although I forgot who it was. One cool thing after a touchdown, I don't even know who the Commanders were playing, but did the Trump dance in the end zone and pointed at the sky because Air Force One did the flyover, so that was pretty cool. But that's tasteless. Avalanche in Vancouver last night.
Coach Bednar knows he has the speed. He can carry it into the zone. Brindley, shifty, Brindley. Wrist shot, saved by Lankinen. Score! Gavin Brindley! His first career game-winning goal! His third career goal!
All right, good job, Moshe. 5-4 Avalanche in that one. Steelers and the Chargers. The Chargers chasing the Broncos, and they win it 25-10 over Aaron Rodgers and the Steelers. And the Nuggets at the Kings tomorrow night, 33 in Castle Rock, 34 in Wheat Ridge, 35 in Denver. You're waking up with Jeff and Billy, and it is Monday. Blake Olson, News Talk 710 KNUS.
Your 710 KNUS forecast this early Monday. Clear skies, temperatures right around 30 degrees by daybreak. For the rest of your Monday, sunny, highs near 70, lows tonight in the low 40s. For Veterans Day on Tuesday, a salute to all you veterans. Sunny skies, highs near 70. Weather brought to you by L&L Heating and Air Conditioning. For quick, trustworthy, and dependable service, call L&L Heating and Air Conditioning at 720-851-1691. Visit them online at bestdenverhvac.com. That's bestdenverhvac.com. You'll be comfortable with L&L. I'm day weather meteorologist Patrice Sutter in the 710 KNUS Weather Center.
Welcome back to the Jeff and Bill Show. Politico headline: Schumer is no longer effective. Dems outraged over the shutdown deal. Do you think they're just kind of stomping their feet, Bill? We didn't get what we want. And they're the more kind of outrageous elements of the Democrat Party that believe in full socialism, right? And they're not going to get everything that they wanted in this deal, but by a week from now, they'll be moved on? Or do you think Chuck Schumer is in real threat of losing his leadership?
Oh, I think there are layers to that, and I do think that those that function on outrage will move on to something else. And oftentimes, those that express their outrage the loudest are the smallest percentage of the group. And we've seen that in a number of situations. And I do, however, think that Schumer's seat is in danger, especially from AOC, because you've seen the crowds that have shown up when she's gone to, Bernie's events. She's younger. She seems to want to get things done, regardless of whether or not you agree or disagree with those things. And I'm pretty sure she understands how a grill works and when you put the cheese on the burgers. So there's a layer of things. Schumer, just to me, has appeared very out of touch with not only Democrats, but also his constituency and at times reality. And
that brings up an interesting point, because if you want to talk about the most out of touch politicians, it's typically a U.S. senator.
Oh,
right?
Yeah,
they run every 6 years. And in fact, the way it's kind of designed, they're not supposed to represent the whims.
No, not
flying around,
yeah,
whatever it might be, right?
Yeah,
that's the House.
Yep.
The Senate they represent the states. States are permanent. There's 2 of them. You get elected every 6 years. So, maybe they're supposed to be out of touch. And in this case, the 8 coming alongside. Well, I'll ask you this question. Who's more in touch? The 8 that decided we're going to cross the barrier here, negotiate a deal, move this forward, get the country and get the government back open again, or those going, unless we get subsidies for Obamacare, we're not voting for this. Who's more in touch? Who's more out of touch?
Ooh, that's a tough one, because I think that on the edges, and what I mean by the people that wanted, we have to have these subsidies permanently restored, I think that was something they were never going to get. And I think the group that just supports, hey, they've agreed to let us have a debate and a vote. And again, I want to see how that's written into it. Is that's a big loser as well. That's not getting what you wanted. It is, in my mind, a step above a verbal handshake, and I mean that, I'm being facetious on that, from the Republicans, the idea that they said, oh, yes, we promise you we'll do this if you do this first. If they can get it into writing, I think that's better, because the Republicans and the Democrats would be within their power as well if the situation was reversed to say, yeah, I know we talked about that beforehand, but we didn't get it in writing and we've got other priorities, so we're not going to do that now. I could see both sides playing that game if it wasn't in writing. If they got this deal in writing, that they have an absolute debate on subsidies, I think that is a small win. Where I think the big miss was, and this is odd for me to say, is I think Chuck Schumer had staked out what probably was at this point the strongest position, which was a 1-year extension in the ACA subsidies, because it allows everybody in the Senate to procrastinate. And we all know they're really good at that. They haven't passed the budget. They like these continuing resolutions. So we know the idea of something that is a painful debate that they don't want to get into, pushing that off for a year, I think would have been very, very attractive. And I also think the Democrats missed out on something by not being able to message that in front of the public for more than about 48 hours. To just say, hey, we're just saying you, American people, shouldn't have to deal with this massive increase now. We're buying you 12 months to know this type of thing is coming, and we're going to try to help make it less. That's a better messaging point in my mind for Democrats, and can probably get some Republicans to move, because now you have this idea about, why does it have to be now? Can't we do this in a year? You guys always kick the can down the road. But the Democrats very strategically took what could have been a very winning message and promptly threw it in the trash, as they do often enough. So what are you going to do?
They've got a winning message enough here in Colorado and nothing to stand on. 9588 texting in, the 8 are out of touch. They fought for 40 days. And didn't get much of anything. So why fight at all? Good question. Who do you think wins today? Republicans, Democrats? Who do you think voters are going to reward? And are we going to see a new Democrat Party moving forward as their base revolts against Chuck Schumer's inability to keep his Democrat caucus together? Join the conversation. Give us a call, 303-696-1971, or text us on the Dan Caplis Law text line at 720-819-5115. Speaking of Dan Caplis suggests you should choose a lawyer who shares your values, because who you choose to represent you in an injury case says a lot about you to everyone involved in the case. Dan Caplis is the son of a police officer and a former seminarian who's dedicated the last 40 years of his life to helping people who've been hurt in serious motor vehicle crashes. Dan is believed to be the only lawyer in Colorado history to win 5 straight multi-million-dollar verdicts in Colorado crash cases. Dan is also believed to have won the largest truck crash verdict in Colorado state history. Dan Caplis Law, the official law firm partner of the Denver Nuggets and the Colorado Avalanche. Dan Caplis Law is a serious firm for serious cases. Dan accepts righteous injury cases on a percentage fee basis so that he can represent good people from all walks of life without regard to ability to pay. So if you need Dan's help, give him a call. Here's the phone number, 303-770-5551, 303-770-5551, or hit dancaplisLaw.com. That's Dan, C-A-P-L-I-S law.com. All right, we'll continue. You're listening to The Jeff and Bill Show.
Does Chuck Schumer survive this? We'll talk about it. This is Denver's Talk Leader, News Talk 710, KNUS.
such a funny opening song.
It is, but it's
like an
sticks.
element of like Green Day in it, right?
It is. Just, yeah, it was fun.
Oh, goodness. Welcome back to the Jeff and Bill Show. Does Chuck Schumer survive the Democratic revolt over 8 Democratic U.S. senators joining Republicans to work out a deal to get the government back open? Is this evident that Chuck Schumer can't keep his coalition together, can't put together a deal that is going to benefit the Democrats, and he needs to go? So, Bill, I'm a little bit of two minds on this. One, like I said, there's no one more out of touch by design in our elected officials than a U.S. senator. I would say the U.S. Supreme Court's way out of touch, but that they're supposed to be, right? They're not even supposed to be in touch with the voting population at all.
That's why they still make him wear those robes.
They're supposed to,
Nobody's
just
wearing those
interpret
anymore.
the Constitution. Go sit in a room and interpret the Constitution.
Yeah.
That's all you need to do. You don't need to worry about what the voters think. But senators tend to be way out of touch and the most likely to be kind of pulled into the corporate lobbyist political world that keeps you radically out of touch, because the only thing you're really delivering for is the people writing the campaign checks. So there's part of me that looks at this and goes, oh, yeah, Schumer will survive, just like Nancy Pelosi, because at the end of the day, they have the most corporate donors. They've played the game the best. The money just pours into whatever they do. So they'll survive. The other part of me goes, Democrat Party's getting more socialist, like openly embracing socialism at this point, electing socialists like you saw in New York. I see it here in Colorado where they show up in droves, 30,000 for Bernie Sanders and AOC. Socialism's having its moment in the Democrat Party. And I could see them running 100 miles an hour down that road and electing more socialists into leadership. And I think Chuck Schumer has socialist leanings. He's not quite a Mamdani yet. So could he be replaced with somebody like that? Yeah. I think AOC could probably go after Chuck Schumer's seat right now and maybe win. What do you think?
Yeah, I think AOC wants Chuck Schumer's seat, and I think she can take it because he's been there a while, and she is much more effective at communication. She's going to be much more energetic out on the campaign trail. And if you're looking at, again, I'm talking about investors. And when I say investors, it means those people that write the big checks in order to fund the political runs. They are investors because they are looking for something else on the other end. That's not always spelled out, but it's access. It's access and a relationship. And I believe those investors see a much longer chance to do business with someone like AOC than they do based on Schumer. So I think there are a number of things, plus the enthusiasm we are seeing for Mamdani in New York City, I think carries over. So I think AOC has a really good shot at it. And Chuck should be really worried because this will hurt him, in my mind, a lot with his constituency, that he couldn't keep all of the horses together, that he had some go rogue and now he has to chase them down and try to bring them back into the fold. And not only do they go rogue, they're doing so in a manner that hurts what he was in charge of. You know, keeping this government thing shut down and extracting more out of the Democrats. So I think it hurts him. I think this hurts him long time in the future here.
Well, if you want to have some entertaining reading, go sign up for a Blue Sky account this morning because they are losing their minds over there. Here's one of the funnier posts.
Yeah.
It's time to Chuck Schumer.
That is funny. And the thing is, I browse both the Twitters and Blue Sky for the same reasons, just the silliness, the silliness and the outrage. Yeah, what else are they saying? What else?
Replace Schumer. Lots of F-bombs and Chuck Schumer's name. Chuck Schumer is no longer effective and should be replaced. The Onion. Chuck Schumer helps pull Democrats back from the brink of courage.
That's funny. That's really funny. That's good.
Here's a text message into our line. I always assumed that Schumer was going to make everyone angry with whatever the final decision was to reopen. The government I assumed he was going to be sacrificed anyway. I think he would have liked to have had a deal that would have been more favorable for the Democrats if he was going to have to go out on it. But Pelosi seems to actually know how to keep people in line. Schumer seems like a bad substitute teacher who doesn't know what's going on with his own class.
Yeah, that's good.
That is a
that
funny
is
one.
Really good.
Let's go to the phone lines. Frank and Evergreen. Good morning, Frank. You're on with Jeff and Bill.
Morning.
Hey, good morning. Billy had been quoting some, or not quoting, but talking about some more or less meaningless statistics earlier about administrative costs of Medicare versus a private company versus government run. So I'd like to quote a meaningless statistic too. And the one that I hear a lot from the right is the average wage in the northern counties of Virginia, which is basically where all the government employees live and work from home, is quite a bit higher than any other place in the country. I'm just curious what Billy thinks about that.
I'm sorry, repeat that? I'm not sure where you were going with it. So repeat that to me.
Well, I mean, you were talking about kind of making the analogy that because administrative costs are higher in private insurance companies, that somehow that's an evil or something. And I'm just trying to figure out why that. Well, I don't know why that's evil, but anyway, the other thing that people say is evil is the fact that the counties of Northern Virginia, which is basically where all the DC workers live, most of them,
and lobbyists.
Yeah, and where their wages, the average wage in those counties is way higher than any other place in the country. Basically, you're in my tax dollar paying their wages. So I don't know. Does that draw any resemblance to what you were saying about private companies having higher admin costs versus government, et cetera?
Not necessarily. I don't see the analogy. And when we go back, I understand that you'd understand going back to the healthcare thing, that you don't see the problem. The issue that I was bringing it up was that the argument on the table at the time was that the private sector is going to offer better costs and be more efficient. And that was it. I was just looking at the percentage each system is spending on administrative costs. That's all. No further than that. That's all it was addressing. So I'm not certain it addresses this, especially when you're talking about the number of things taxpayers pay for. You when you lumped in that place in Virginia, part of it were lobbyists and other people. So that unless you think that everybody unless you think, Frank, that everybody pulling a government check is pulling six figures and higher. I'm not sure.
Same thing applies to private companies like insurance companies. A lot of those are multimillionaire, high at the top of the companies. That skews their that average up too. So my point is, these are pointless statistics, meaningless statistics. They don't converge to anything meaningful. And I know you're a mathematician of sorts, Billy, so you'll understand what it means to converge to a solution. And these don't converge to anything. The bottom line is that the private capitalism, market-driven systems are more efficient by definition than anything the government can run. Now, that said, that doesn't mean we want people who fall out of the system to be, starving in the streets like they are in India. We want to take care of everybody, and we need something to do that. But to force everybody into Medicare for all is so absurd that it's hard to even have a conversation about it. The fact is, a third of the country who work for companies have decent health care. Now, it's not perfect, but they have health care. I'm one of those people. You're one of those people. And why do we want to destroy all of that just to have more government programs?
Well, I think and understand what you're saying about the math side of things, but I think when you look at the percentages of each system and what they're spending on administrative care, I think that can be applicable because you're looking at efficiencies inside of each system. So I understand the idea, but if you can't look at two differing systems and then compare the percentages they are paying out, then I don't think we can use any math. And what I'm hearing from Frank is we shouldn't be able to compare
I would agree with
anything
that.
back and forth. Okay, so comparisons are worthless?
Not anything. There's a few things you can, you know, if you want to design an experiment statistically and do it up front versus just, you know, lob out statistics that nobody understands, you know, there are some things that you can use statistics for, but this isn't one of them. Comparing, you know, government-run healthcare administrative costs to private companies it's just absurd. You know, I mean, there's nothing, makes nothing other than a political statement.
Well, I understand, Frank, where you're going, but in part because the private companies are looking for it as far as a profit motive, and you don't necessarily have that motive on the other end. So the pay scales are different. I mean, for years, Frank, you know that people have said, hey, you want to make less money but have better benefits, you go and work for the federal government. And then you make the bigger cash when you're out in the private sector, in part because of, you know, the private sector is more volatile. But that's where they pay more. So, I mean,
but that
I don't understand where you're
profit
going with this.
incentive is actually really,
Yeah,
really
they do.
important to economics.
Well, you know, we're back to the same old, you know, roundy round here, and that is that basically anything the government does, it should only do if it can't be done by private industry or private people, private parties, private companies, et cetera. And at this point, we're, you know, the Democrats especially are in the position of, and they've been pushing this for 40 or 50 years now, of wanting to do everything for everybody. And it's gotten to the point of absurdity. And in the process, they have educated, they control the education system by their union teachers.
Correct.
That, you know, has you know, convinced all these kids, unfortunately, that, hey, this is the right way to go, you know, just lay in the couch all day and watch Oprah.
I totally disagree with that, Frank.
Really?
The idea, what's convinced people is the idea they get out there and they can't afford health care. That's part of what convinced people. What convinced people over 15 years ago when we were looking at debating the ACA were things like lifetime caps and restrictions on care. That's what convinced people.
What convinced people, Peter, I'm sorry, not Peter, what convinced people, Billy, is that this notion of if you can't first succeed, give up. You know, I mean, you got a job where you can't afford health care. Well, go get another friggin' job, dude.
No, Frank,
You know,
Frank, stop. That's not applicable to the examples I gave you. The examples I gave you were on caps on lifetime care and exclusions based on things you had. It doesn't matter. If you have a certain type of cancer, Frank, going out and getting another job isn't going to get you coverage because none of the insurance companies will cover you. And you know that. You were alive at the time, and you know that, Frank. You're just ignoring it because it's convenient to your argument.
There's a perfect example where our government did something good. The pre-existing condition thing was good. Now, if they could just focus on things like that are good, that help people, like, luckily I'm not in that position, but I can definitely empathize with people who are. That was good. Now let's go pick out some more good things to do instead of making us all be miserable with socialized medicine. It's absurd. We have the best doctors in the world here because they come here to make money.
That's right.
And you know what, Billy? You go to work every morning at the radio station to make money. What is wrong with that? So what's the next good thing our government can do besides, you know, that they admitted they did one thing good. Now what's the next good thing they can do? They can make sure that people who really are in need can't get off this couch and get a job. Let's take care of them. Let's not make Frank and Billy go on socialized medicine. It's absurd.
I would also throw in there, let's make Frank and Billy not have medical bankruptcies. Because you and I both, Frank, can go bankrupt based on having an adverse medical condition. So that's part of it, too.
That's a good one. How can we solve that one?
I would change some of the structures as far as insurance and healthcare. But the other thing is, and here's the thing is, I'm not all in favor of something like a socialized healthcare system. I think there can be a blended system. I just think that how we have allowed our insurance companies to function is counterintuitive to the basic rules of capitalism. And that's where
agree.
I push back.
I would agree
that's
with
where
that.
I push back.
Agreed.
But why do you think that is?
Agreed. And here's the other
Why
thing
do you
too
think
about
it's
insurance
so hard to
companies.
start a health insurance company?
We share some of the disdain for insurance companies. Trust me.
Yeah.
But that, guys,
and
that's
here is
part
the-
is in part because they game the system to where the government steps in and keeps that marketplace limited.
Yeah, and they're paying off the politicians
Exactly.
like Pelosi and et cetera.
It's exactly
so here's the
right.
other thing, Billy. Billy, here's the other thing you mentioned.
Yeah.
I share disdain for insurance companies, and here's one statistic. It's not a statistic. It's just I don't know what you call it. But here's an item. Who are the richest companies in the country? Insurance companies. Who provides the least in terms of productivity? They don't do anything. They take money from one hand and shovel it out the other hand.
Right.
They don't add any benefit other than being the guy in the middle. Matter of fact, I worked for for 5 years. I worked for McKesson, which is the largest drug company on the planet. They don't produce drugs, but they sell them. So so the insurance companies, they don't add any value. They don't add any other than, and the reason why McKesson went down, the division I worked for, is because they couldn't do the billing in their information system. They couldn't get it right. And insurance companies, that's what they do. They get the billing process right, and we'll call it right. It's not really right. They don't really add any product, any value to the product. And I agree that there's a problem, but until we get the politicians out of our hair and let them go solve a real problem, like helping people who really can't get care, instead of trying to force us all into socialized medicine, it's not going to get solved because they're making way too much money from the insurance companies.
Yeah, Frank, and I agree with you there. And see, the problem that I think that all of us can come to an agreement on this, and thank you so much for the phone call, is that we are expecting those lawmakers to solve a problem. And I'm not being facetious. I'm just saying, look at the long list of things in your life that has been a problem, a pain, a difficulty, and how many times have politicians from either party come to that rescue and made that easier. We can point to small gains and small times, but I don't know, it's hard to find those sorts of large, life-changing things that the lawmakers are,
They actually never will be able to, because there's thousands of market forces that actually determine what the cost of a product is, whether or not it'll be purchased, and central planners can never figure that out. They can never do it. That's why and that's what's so shocking to me is, like, you recognize that, like, as Bill just pointed out, that politicians can never solve anything, and then the voters are like, let's vote in Mom Donnie, who said that the government's going to solve all of our problems.
Yeah. See, I think the thing for me is that I'm looking more at the current crop of people that we have, because there are times in which I think the government has been able to solve certain things. And again, since we're talking about healthcare, I go back to the pre-existing conditions and lifetime caps. That was a great solution that had to happen. So they have their moments. They're just so few and far between. One that is close and near and dear to my heart is changes the Aurora City Council made to law enforcement and chases and also impounding cars. Those, for me, were a direct improvement to my community. Now, many of those people lost the election last time around, but I feel I can point to that as lawmakers who were making a direct impact on something that was bettering my community. But it is so few and far between. And to think about all the long list of bills that the Democrat legislature ran here in Colorado.
700 of them.
And how many of them would not just directly, but even a little bit outside your social circle or outside of where you operate usually in your life, would make things easier and or better. I'd have a hard time coming up with more than one or two. That's
During
it.
the conversation, would love to hear from you. 303-696-1971. Text us on the Dan Caplis Law text line, 720-819-5115. Donald Trump just posted on Truth Social a few minutes ago All air traffic controllers must get back to work now. All caps. Anyone who doesn't will be substantially docked. For those air traffic controllers who were great patriots and didn't take any time off for the Democrat shutdown hoax, I'll be recommending a bonus of $10,000 per person for distinguished service to our country. For those that did nothing but complain and took time off, even though everyone knew they would be paid in full shortly into the future, I am not happy with you. You didn't step up to help the USA against the fake Democrat attack that was only meant to hurt our country. You will have a negative mark, at least in my mind, against your record. If you want to leave service in the near future, please do not hesitate to do so. No payment or severance of any kind, ! You will be quickly replaced by true patriots who will do a better job on the brand new state-of-the-art equipment, the best in the world, that we are in the process of ordering. The last administration wasted billions of dollars trying to fix antiquated junk. They had no idea what they were doing. Again, to our great American patriots, God bless you. I won't be able to send you money fast enough. To all others, report to work immediately. God bless America. President Donald J. Trump. Love your thoughts on that. We'll get to that next. You're listening to the Jeff and Bill Show.
This is Denver's talk leader, News Talk 710, KNUS.
Welcome back to the Jeff and Bill Show. Donald Trump posted on Truth Social that if you were an air traffic controller and didn't take any time off, you're going to get a bonus of $10,000. But if you did, you're not a great patriot. Trump saying he's not happy with you. And text messages on both sides of this, 6430 saying Trump's a man-child. 1712 saying John Caldera had on his program an air traffic controller. John asked him why he kept working when he wasn't getting paid. He said, because it's how I was raised. I love that. I love that Trump is awarding that kind of patriotism and integrity in an individual. So what do you think about this? $10,000 if you didn't take a day off and you were an air traffic controller, a good bonus? Supporting the Patriots out there, Bill?
I'm not 100% up on this, but wasn't it a couple of weeks ago that Donald Trump was saying that he wasn't going to give any back pay to anybody? That was one of the things in the first couple of weeks that he was going to push, that we weren't going to give any back pay. So
Seems like he might have changed his mind here.
Yeah, but I'm kind of curious, what choice should the air traffic controller or anybody else have made at that point? Because that person has bills to pay. And so when the president at the time was saying that he and his party were not going to offer back pay, then why wouldn't you go out to find something?
Then you're not a true patriot, Bill.
You're supposed to work for free. Now who's in favor of socialism?
Work for free. Work for the welfare of your nation.
Work for the man,
It's all coming back, 10,000.
Yeah, work for free.
All right, we'll continue. The debate is hot. You're listening to The Jeff and Bill Show.
We're going to work for free. Congress has to go first. This is 710 KNUS.